3 husbands, 3 weddings, 3 graves, and every single time, Aisha cried louder than anyone. She threw herself into the dust. She beat her chest. She tore her wrapper and screamed at the sky, "Why me? Am I the only woman in this village? Why do the gods hate me like this?" She rolled on the ground, covering herself with sand, shaking like a broken woman. People held her. Women cried with her. Men shook their heads in pity. But listen carefully. On the night of her 3rd husband's burial, when everyone had gone home, when the moon was full and bright, a small boy passing by her compound heard something strange. Not crying, not praying, not mourning, but laughter. Soft, slow, cold. He looked through the fence and saw Aisha standing in the middle of her yard, lifted to the moon, smiling. Not the smile of a grieving wife, but the smile of someone who was counting. And when the 4th man said he would marry her, the village did not prepare for a wedding. They prepared for another funeral. But this time, the groom refused to die, and what he saw on the 7th night has never been spoken of without a whisper. But before we go back to how it all began, take a quick second to support this story. Hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and join our growing family of folktale lovers. And tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from tonight? I always love seeing where my amazing friends are listening from. Now, let us go back to the beginning, to the day the beautiful widow named Aisha first stepped into the village of Kayandaji. In a quiet village called Kayandaji, there lived a woman named Aisha. Aisha was beautiful in a way that made people uncomfortable. Her skin was smooth like fresh milk. Her eyes were calm, too calm. She hardly laughed, she hardly spoke. But when she walked past, men forgot what they were saying. Women pulled their husbands closer, and old women looked away, because Aisha had been married 3 times. The first husband was Musa. Musa was strong and proud, a farmer with wide shoulders. He married Aisha during the dry season. The wedding was big. Drums played, rice was shared, the whole village danced. On the 7th night of their marriage, Musa screamed in his sleep. By morning, he was dead. No wound, no sickness, no blood, just cold. The elders said it was heart failure. Aisha cried. She rolled on the ground. She screamed Musa's name until her voice broke. People pitied her. After 1 year, she married again. The second husband was Bello. Bello was a trader, calm and kind. He said people were foolish to fear a widow. He married her during the rainy season. Again, the drums played. Again, the feast was large. On the 7th night, Bello stopped breathing. No wound, no poison, no sign of struggle, just cold. This time, the whispers grew louder, but Aisha cried even harder than before. She fainted at the burial. Some said, this woman is cursed. Others said, no, she's unlucky. But one old woman named Mama Ladi said nothing. She only watched. 2 years later, Aisha married again. The third husband was Sani. Sani was stubborn. He laughed at fear. He said, if death wants me, let it come. The village begged him not to marry her. He did not listen. The wedding was smaller this time. People danced, but not happily. On the 7th night, the wind was strong, dogs howled, and before sunrise, Sani was dead, cold like the others. Now the village was no longer whispering, they were afraid. 3 husbands, 3 7th nights, the same pattern, the same cold body. And something else. On the night of Sani was buried, a young boy named Tunde was returning from the stream. He passed by Aisha's compound and he heard something strange. Not crying, not singing, but soft laughter. He looked through the fence and there she was, standing alone in her yard, looking up to the moon, smiling. Not the smile of a happy woman, but the smile of someone who was waiting. The next morning, Tunde told his mother. His mother slapped him. Never say such things, she warned. But Mama Ladi heard it, and for the first time, the old woman closed her eyes and whispered, "It has started again." Because this was not the first time a woman like Aisha had appeared in Kayandaji. And somewhere far away, a hunter named Kabir was about to return home. He had heard the story, and unlike the others, Kabir was not afraid of death. He was curious about it, and he had already made a decision. He would marry Aisha. But Kabir had a secret plan, and he had no intention of dying on the 7th night. When the hunter Kabir arrived in Kayandaji, the whole village already knew why he had come. News travels fast in small villages. Before sunset that same day, people gathered under the big tamarind tree where the elders usually sat. Kabir stood before them calmly. "I want to marry Aisha," he said. The words fell like a stone in water. Silence spread through the crowd. One old man shook his head slowly. "Son," he said, "we have already buried 3 husbands." Another elder added, "All of them died on the 7th night." Women in the crowd began murmuring. "Leave this matter alone," someone said. But Kabir did not move. His face remained calm. "I have heard these stories," he replied. "Then why do you still want to marry her?" the village head asked. Kabir looked around at the frightened faces. Then he said something strange. "Because I want to know the truth." The villagers stared at him like he had lost his mind. But one person was watching silently from the edge of the crowd. Aisha. She stood still, her colorful wrapper shining in the afternoon sun. Her face was calm, too calm, and for a moment, her eyes met Kabir's. Neither of them looked away. 2 weeks later, the wedding took place. But this time, the celebration was not joyful. Drums still played, food was still shared, but people did not dance the way they used to. They watched the bride and groom carefully, as if they were already waiting for another funeral. Some women even whispered prayers under their breath. Kabir noticed everything, but he pretended not to care. Aisha sat beside him during the ceremony, her face beautiful and peaceful. She hardly spoke. When she smiled, it was soft and mysterious, the same smile people had begun to fear. That night, Kabir moved into Aisha's compound, the small mud house where the other husbands had lived, the same house where they had died. Villagers avoided the place after sunset. Even dogs refused to sleep near the compound. The first night passed peacefully. Kabir slept beside Aisha like a normal husband. Nothing happened. The second night came. Again, nothing. The third night, still nothing. But Kabir was not relaxing, because every night before sleeping, he secretly did something.
He tied a thin leather charm around his waist. Inside the charm was powder given to him by an old hunter deep in the forest. The hunter had told him something important. If the woman is what I think she is, this will keep your spirit awake. Kabir did not fully understand the meaning, but he believed the old man. So every night he wore the charm, and every night he pretended to sleep deeply. By the 7th night, the village was already preparing their minds. People spoke in low voices. Tomorrow will be the 7th night. The hunter will buy like the others. Even Mama Ladi, the old woman, sat quietly outside her hut that evening. Her eyes were watching the road that led to Aisha's house. Then the 7th night came. The air in the village felt strange. The wind blew softly through the trees. Dogs howled far away. Inside the hut, the lantern burned quietly. Aisha lay beside Kabir, her breathing slow and peaceful. Kabir closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, but inside, his mind was awake. He waited and waited. Midnight slowly approached. Then suddenly, Aisha moved. Kabir kept his breathing steady, slow, deep, like a man in heavy sleep. But through his half-closed eyes, he watched. Aisha slowly sat up. She turned her head, looking carefully at Kabir's face, making sure he was asleep. For a long moment, she stared at him. Then something strange happened. Aisha stood up quietly. She walked to the corner of the hut and knelt beside a small clay pot. Kabir's heart began beating harder. Very slowly, Aisha opened the pot, and inside it, Kabir saw something that made the hair on his body rise. It was not food, it was not water. Inside the pot was a strange dark skin, wrinkled, dry, like the skin of an old creature. Aisha touched it gently. Then she whispered something in a language Kabir did not understand. And the moment she finished speaking, her beautiful body began to change. Kabir forced himself not to move because he was about to discover the secret that had killed 3 men. And what he saw next was something no human husband was meant to witness. Kabir's fingers slowly tightened around the small leather charm tied to his waist. The hunter's words echoed in his mind. On the 7th night, watch her. Aisha reached the clay pot. She lifted the cloth covering it. Then she slid her hand inside. For a moment, she paused, and slowly she pulled something out. Kabir's blood turned cold. It was a skin, not cloth, not leather, skin, dry, dark, wrinkled, like the hide of some dead animal that had been buried and forgotten for many years. Aisha held it with both hands. Then she began to whisper, but the words were not Hausa. They were not any language Kabir had ever heard. The sounds were ancient, cold, like voices crawling out of the grave. Outside the hut, the wind suddenly began to howl. The lantern flame danced violently. Kabir held his breath. Then, slowly, Aisha lifted the skin and placed it over her shoulders. The moment it touched her body, something terrible began to happen. Her smooth, beautiful skin began to vanish. Her back bent sharply with a sickening crack. Her fingers stretched longer, longer, until they became long black claws. Her neck twisted unnaturally, and her face, her beautiful face, melted away into something twisted and horrifying, something no human should ever see. Kabir's chest tightened with fear, but he remembered the hunter's warning. Whatever you see, do not move. The creature that was once Aisha slowly turned towards the mat. Her glowing yellow eyes rested on Kabir. Then she smiled, a long, terrible smile. Kabir shut his eyes, pretending to sleep. The creature stepped towards him, slow, careful steps. Her claws scraped softly across the floor. Kabir felt her cold breath touch his face. For a moment, her claws hovered over his chest. Kabir's heart pounded so loudly he feared she could hear it. Then suddenly, she hissed, "The husband sleeps deeply." She stepped back, then quietly walked out of the hut. Kabir waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. Then he opened his eyes. The hut was empty. Kabir jumped up silently, grabbed his knife, and stepped out. The moon hung bright above the silent village. Kabir moved quickly between the huts. Then he saw her. Under the large tamarind tree, the creature was digging into the ground with her claws, like a starving animal. Kabir stepped closer. Then he saw what lay beneath the soil. 3 skeletons, human bones, Musa, Bello, Sani, the 3 men who had died before him. The creature laughed softly. So many strong men, but none survived the 7th night. Kabir stepped forward. "I will." The creature froze. Slowly, she turned. Her glowing eyes widened. "You were awake?" Kabir lifted his knife. "You killed them." The creature burst into laughter, a terrible laughter that echoed through the empty village. "Yes, and tonight you will join them." She lunged towards him, but Kabir was already running. He dashed back towards the hut. The creature screamed behind him. Kabir burst inside and rushed to the clay pot. He reached in and grabbed the strange skin. Kabir stared at the cursed skin in his hand. The wind howled through the trees around the village. Aisha knelt before him, trembling. Her glowing eyes were filled with fear. "Please," she whispered, "if you destroy it, I will never be beautiful again." Kabir's grip tightened. "You should have thought about that before killing innocent men." Tears began to fall down her face. "You don't understand," she continued weakly. "My beauty was never a gift. It was a prison." Kabir said nothing. The moonlight revealed the 3 graves behind her. Musa, Bello, Sani, 3 men who had trusted her, 3 men who never lived to see the 8th day. Aisha lowered her head. "I was born ugly," she said quietly. "Very ugly." Her voice shook with old pain. "In my village, people mocked me every day. Children threw stones at me. Women covered their faces when I passed. Men laughed." She swallowed hard. "Then one night," she continued, "I went into the forest. I had decided to end my life. But before I could," she looked towards the dark forest. A spirit appeared. Kabir's eyes narrowed. "It told me I could become the most beautiful woman any man had ever seen." Kabir already knew the rest. "But beauty from spirits always has a price," he said quietly. Aisha nodded. "Yes. The spirit said I could marry, but never for more than 7 nights." Kabir looked at the graves again. "And every 7th night, my husband must die," she finished. Silence fell over the village. The wind grew stronger. The trees began to shake. Aisha's voice dropped to a whisper. "If you destroy the skin, the magic will disappear." Kabir raised his knife slowly. "And if I return it?" Aisha's eyes filled with dread. then another husband will die. Kabir closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his decision was made. The knife flashed in the moonlight. Slice! The cursed skin tore apart in his hands. A terrible scream erupted from the forest. The wind roared like an angry beast. Aisha screamed. Her body began to change. Her glowing beauty vanished. Her smooth skin cracked and faded. Her elegant face twisted. Her body shrank until the woman kneeling in the sand was no longer the breathtaking beauty Kabir had married. In her place was the woman she had once been. Thin, crooked, plain, ugly, very ugly. Aisha slowly touched her face. Her hands trembled. The tears that fell now were different, not of fear, but of understanding. Kabir stood quietly. The wind slowly died. The forest became silent again. The curse was gone. No more husbands would die. No more seventh nights. Aisha slowly stood. For the first time since Kabir had known her, she did not hide her face. She simply looked at him. Her voice was calm. "You saved many lives tonight." Kabir said nothing. She turned and began to walk away, towards the dark road leading out of the village. Kabir frowned. "Where are you going?" Aisha did not stop. "My beauty brought death to this village. My ugliness should not remain here." Kabir watched her walk away into the night, step by step. Her shadow slowly disappeared into the darkness beyond the trees. No one followed her. No one stopped her. And from that night forward, no one in the village ever saw Aisha again. Some say she wandered deep into the forest of the north. Others say she traveled far away where no one knew her story. But the elders of the village still tell this warning to young men. Beauty that comes from spirits always carries a curse. And every time the wind howls through the tamarind tree on the seventh night, the villagers remember the woman who was once the most beautiful in the land and the terrible price she paid for it.